Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, we take a first look at Eagles Cardinals this Sunday in the desert, the Zach Ertz revenge game, Jalen Hurts versus Kyler Murray, a ton of storylines as the Eagles try to get to 5-0 in 2022.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. This Wednesday edition of LOE is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. I'm Louis DiBiase. You can follow me on Twitter at DiBiaseLOE and at LockedOnBirds. You can check out the show Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms, available as well in video form on YouTube. The Eagles try to get to 5-0 this Sunday against the 2-2 Arizona Cardinals. They're headed to the desert to take on Kyler Murray, take on Zach Ertz, to take on, I would say, a roller coaster of a team at 500. A team, though, that did beat the Eagles a couple years ago, that has a quarterback that can make plays at any moment outside of structure and the drop of the hat. It was a team last year, the first half of the season, that was the hottest team in football, a playoff team as well, that definitely choked, though. So I don't know what version of the Cardinals the Eagles are going to see on Sunday, but it's definitely going to be one of their bigger tests when you look at their entire 2022 schedule. There's so many storylines to get into on today's show. The first one I want to get into, though, is yet again another revenge game where the Eagles take on a former franchise great that maybe didn't end his stint with the Eagles on beautiful terms, right? Week one, you had Deuce Staley, who wanted the Eagles head coaching job over and over again, and he kept getting passed up for other candidates, right? And then you had, of course, Jalen Reagor and Justin Jefferson, I think, trying to prove a point to the Eagles in Minnesota. They take Reagor and trade him away. The Eagles passed on Justin Jefferson in the 2020 NFL draft for Jalen Reagor. They beat them. Like I said, they beat Deuce Staley. Then they destroyed Carson Wentz. We all know the Wentz story, especially if you listen to this podcast. And then this past week, they beat Doug Peterson. So they are 4-0 this year in revenge games. They have a lot of success in revenge games throughout their franchise's history. And now they have another one with Zach Ertz coming to town. And that's going to be this Sunday at 4:25. It's going to be the first game since week 2. They don't play at 1 o'clock. It's been a lot of 1 o'clock games. And then Monday night, week 2 against Minnesota. This week is 4:25. And when you look at Zach Ertz compared to some of the other revenge games, I was wondering, is this one as intense? Because I think Eagles fans have mixed feelings about Doug Peterson. I think they have even more mixed feelings about Carson Wentz. Even Jalen Reagor fans are not a big fan of Jalen Reagor, and Reagor is not a big fan of Philadelphia. I think most Eagles fans love Deuce Staley, but I think Staley has reservations about how things ended with this organization that really just didn't believe in him as a head coach. With Zach Ertz, I think it's close to, I don't think it's as intense, for instance, as the Carson Wentz story or the Doug Peterson, but it certainly is up there. I think Ertz did end his time with the Eagles after getting traded in 2021, last year before the deadline, to the Arizona Cardinals with, I don't know, I think he felt a little bit bitter. I think the relationship was mended a lot in that 2020 offseason, when they thought he was going to get traded, but the Eagles wanted to hold on to Ertz for better value. He ends up coming back and playing those first 5, 6, or 7 games of the season. I think the relationship got better. And Ertz even said in a press conference this week that, he doesn't look back at his time in Philly with any sort of reservations. He said he grew up in Philly for 8, pretty much 9 years, won a Super Bowl with this team, up there all time in receptions, yards, touchdowns. He's a legend. I don't know if anybody's ever going to wear number 86 again in franchise history. He was that good from 2013 to 2021. But I do think at the same time, Ertz definitely wasn't a big fan of how the Eagles handled things and, his situation from, I'd say, 2019 to 2021, right? Because he wanted that new big contract that you saw so many like Travis Kelce get, and George Kittle, and even eventually the one that the Eagles gave Dallas Goedert. And I think he felt bitter because it makes a lot of sense why he'd feel bitter. The run he was on from 2016 to 2019, carrying those Eagles teams when they had pretty much nothing at wide receiver. They were so unstable. He was the go-to target for so many different quarterbacks, for, Nick Foles, for Sam Bradford, for Carson Wentz. Heck, Mark Sanchez was throwing him passes, Jalen Hurts as well. Ertz really helped elevate that offense when there wasn't a lot of reliable targets. And you see the 2017 run, catching the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. 2018 setting a record for most receptions for a tight end in single-season history with over 100, breaking Jason Witten's record. 2019, the burn the ship speech, right? Ertz and Dallas Goedert carried that offense's pass production at the end of the year when all the receivers were coming from the practice squad. So he really did carry the load, right? And yet the Eagles lowballed him when it comes to a new contract after that 2019 season because, let's be real, they were planning on committing to Dallas Goedert long-term, just as they did. So I get why Ertz felt bitter. He was coming off an incredible 4 to 5 season run. He was not regressing at all when the Eagles lowballed him, and yet he still risked it all, played on that expiring contract that had him severely underpaid. He doesn't demand a trade and plays hurt, right? He does everything the right way. And then 2020 completely kills his value, and the Eagles don't trade him after he toughed it out in 2020 because they wanted to hold on to him to get the maximum amount of value. Zach Ertz had every reason to be mad at the Eagles and to say, F you, get me off this team. I'm not playing another snap for you. He could have said that after the 2019 season. He could have said that after the 2020 season. Heading into 2021, he had no reason to come back to the Eagles and risk even more injuries or downplay to lower his market value even more for his potential next team. But he was such an amazing leader, such an amazing teammate, a player on the field as well. He was such a team-first guy that loved being a Philadelphia Eagle, that he always did things with a team-first mindset. And that's why I always had so much respect for Zach and the way he went about things, because the writing was on the wall with Dallas Goedert. Honestly, the minute they took him in the second round in 2018, I don't think we saw it as like a replacement at the time because, Ertz was coming off again, winning the Super Bowl for you, but you could tell the more the years went on and how good Dallas Goedert looked and just how much younger he was and the more dynamic ability as a run after the catch guy and a better, superior blocker. You knew Dallas Goedert was going to get that deal. But Zach Ertz nonetheless handled everything the right way. But I would understand why he, kind of feels a little bitter because he did everything the right way. And the Eagles, I don't know. I think they could have handled things better for sure. Not saying they should have paid Ertz and gave in just because Ertz did everything the right way. And you don't pay a guy for what he did, more for what he's going to do. And while I still think Zach Ertz is a top 10 tight end in this league right now, and he could still be a good player for years. And if he didn't have Dallas Goedert, I would have gave him that contract. But I understand this business and why the Eagles went with Goedert. I think, again, you could have handled things in a different way for sure. Maybe traded him earlier, something. But you made the right decision not paying him over Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert is like I said, a superior player, run after the catch. He's consistently the top tight end in, yards after the catch. He is an amazing blocker. He's just a more dynamic player than Ertz was and definitely is. He is moving into the prime years of his career, and Ertz is more, on the downside, on the downturn of his career. So they made the right call. But I definitely get why Zach Ertz would be a little bit upset. But it is crazy looking back to see the Eagles went from Ertz to Goedert. How many teams have that luxury? And to have those guys together for, 4 seasons, right? Yeah, 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021, an incredible luxury. I'm very curious to know who at the end of their career is going to be seen as the better Eagles tight end all time. According to my poll on Twitter, you guys all still think Ertz, but it's going to be close because Dallas Goedert looks like an absolute stud these past 2 years without Ertz. So I think they definitely made the right call. But it's definitely going to be a revenge game. I think Ertz is going to have, all these players like to say it's just another game, but it meant more to Rager. It meant more to Deuce Staley. It meant more to Justin Jefferson and to Carson Wentz and to Doug Peterson. And I think it certainly will mean more to Zach Ertz as well. But this game isn't just about Zach Ertz. There are a lot of matchups to get into, a lot of dynamic factors. Jalen Hurts against Kyler Murray, the Cardinals defense, their playmakers on offense. We're going to take a first look at the matchup on both sides of the ball coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's show is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, I sounded like a Southerner. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. All you got to do is head over to linkedinjobs.com, add your job in the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you like to interview and hire. That's why small businesses rank LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Eagles fans, welcome back into this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles. We thank you for making LOE your first listen each and every day. Make sure also you check out NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL. Locked On's local experts give you the inside scoop on the 5 biggest games of the NFL weekend, including Sunday and Monday Night Football. Plus betting advice from the field's leading expert, BetOnline. Follow NFL Key Predictions every Friday on Locked On NFL, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. On today's edition of Locked On Eagles, we're taking a first look at the Eagles-Cardinals matchup this Sunday in Arizona, a 4:25 kickoff. It is the 2-2 Cardinals against the 4-0 Eagles. And yeah, the Cardinals are just, kind of a complete roller coaster. I mean, they beat the Panthers this past Sunday in a gritty, close matchup that neither team really looked great in. They lost to both really good teams they played. The Chiefs week 1. They got pounced as well week 3 by the Los Angeles Rams, as they did in the playoffs last year. But then they had that amazing come-from-behind overtime win week 2 against, a 1-3 Raiders team. But it's a 1-3 Raiders team that's severely underperforming and is very talented. Kyler Murray put that team on his back. They get Rondale Moore back. They've got Hollywood Brown, A.J. Green, Zach Ertz, Trey McBride, their second-round rookie, tight end. Even without DeAndre Hopkins, this is still a pretty talented team on both sides of the ball. And who knows who the Eagles are going to get. It's a big game, though, for the Eagles at 4-0. It seems like at 4-0, you should feel okay. And even if you drop a game on the road to a former playoff team with a great quarterback, that's okay. But, hey, this win is very important. You look at the NFC East standings right now. The Eagles are 4-0, but they're only a game up for first place. The Dallas Cowboys are 3-1. The New York Giants are 3-1. And I don't think the Giants scare me. I think they're definitely the flukiest 3-1 team in the NFL. Haven't really beat anybody. And Daniel Jones doesn't look like anything special. They're not winning because of their quarterback. I think they're winning because of their running back and, really good coaching. But Dallas, you got to keep winning to stay up on Dallas. You play the Cowboys next week, and they have all the talent that was a playoff team last year, and they don't even have Dak Prescott back yet. They're 3-0 with Cooper Rush as their starter. So each win for the Eagles matters. They can't get comfortable despite being 4 games over 500. This is going to be a really important game, and I think the Eagles should be favored. Again, since Arizona is all over the place and the Eagles have dominated, in every fashion, the Cardinals have legitimate holes. Like, you look at their offensive line, you look at the inconsistency, I would say, with their pass rush without Chandler Jones. Their linebackers are super talented. Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons, 2 former first-round picks, but they're inconsistent. Their secondary, everything is pretty much inconsistent with the Cardinals. It makes sense why they're 2-2. Whereas the Eagles, they're number 1 in sacks. They're number 1 in turnovers forced. They have the best turnover differential in the NFL. They're the best team right now throwing the football down the field. They're still, to me, the best rushing attack in the league, with a quarterback taking an MVP-like step. Their offensive line's amazing. They're so talented with pass catchers and running back. They're loaded. They're absolutely loaded. So the Eagles, even on the road, should be favorites over the Cardinals. But it's going to be a back-and-forth battle. Like I said, they have weapons. They have one of the hardest quarterbacks to get to the ground. Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts are top-tier mobile quarterbacks. So that's going to be a challenge that, even when this Eagles team that leads the league in sacks dominates this Arizona offensive line, Kyler Murray, as we saw in that Raiders game, can pull a rabbit out of a hat. So you got to make sure that you get him to the ground. They are a team that is still very dangerous, and it makes sense why they got hot at times last year. And despite the inconsistency of those linebackers, if you're trying to put a spy on Jalen Hurts, kind of like the Jaguars did at times this past Sunday, even in blitzes, they had a spy. Devin Lloyd was watching Hurts a lot behind the line of scrimmage. Isaiah Simmons and Zaven Collins are two former first-round picks that when you're building a linebacker in the lab when it comes to size, speed, athleticism, sideline to sideline agility, coverage, wingspan, hit power, it makes sense why the Cardinals took a chance on both of those guys. They fit the bill when it comes to physical upside. So they definitely have a lot of pieces on both sides of the ball that are going to make it hard for the Eagles. Why, though, I feel good about this game, again, is how inconsistent the Cardinals are, and they just really are not good against good teams. As I mentioned this year, they beat the Raiders and Panthers, not horrible teams, but they're not good teams either. The teams they lost to, handedly so, by the way, the Chiefs and the Rams, have been two of the best teams of the last 5 years. And so the Cardinals just really don't get up for those great games against really good teams like the Eagles. And I think part of it is they're just not very physical. If they're going to get into a dogfight with a team like Philadelphia, I think they're going to be outmatched. Yeah, Kyler Murray, the entire Cardinals team. I mean, when was the last time they had a real impressive win against a potential title contender? You know, even the Eagles this year, they haven't beat a complete juggernaut, but the Cardinals don't have the wins on their resume the Eagles do this year. I think the Jaguars are a playoff team that should probably win that division. They have the best quarterback in the division. The Minnesota Vikings are 3-1, and they're loaded with talent, and you dominated them on Monday Night Football. The Detroit Lions clearly look like a better team than everybody gave them credit for. You know what I mean? In Washington, yeah, they stink. They're 1-3, but they got talent for sure. They have firepower on offense, and they've got a good defensive line. So I think the Eagles have way more impressive wins than the Cardinals do, not just this year, but even last year. Arizona was hot, but they never really beat any great teams. So yeah, they got some playmakers on both sides of the ball. They're going to make it difficult. This is not going to be a blowout, but I do feel good about the Eagles win here in the desert to get to 5-0. I think they're more physical. They're more complete on both sides of the ball. They're not inconsistent. And another factor, they have better coaching. I think Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, and Jonathan Gannon, way better play callers and game planners than Cliff Kingsbury. I do not respect Cliff Kingsbury. As, you know, he's young and he's offensive minded, so everybody early on put him in that group with, you know, obviously Sean McVay and LaFleur and Zach Taylor. You know, there's so many of those new young guys that come from Kyle Shanahan, that Mike Shanahan coaching tree, and now the McVay coaching tree. But Cliff, to me, is not one of those guys. I think there's a lot of ways you can beat this team, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Eagles do attack Arizona on Sunday. One of the big matchups, though, of course, is going to be Jalen Hurts versus Kyler Murray. You saw that shootout in 2020, the entertainment level between those two guys. And I think it's another tough test for Hurts as he goes up against one of the better quarterbacks the Eagles will see this year in the 2022 regular season. We'll get into that matchup coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. Guys, today's show is sponsored by the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season. Jalen Hurts looks really good right now. I would understand why you put money down on him as the MVP. Right now, the favorites would probably be him, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen, right? So Jalen Hurts, maybe bet on him for MVP. You know, if you want to go for Offensive Player of the Year, the odds right now are still pretty good for A.J. Brown that you could get a lot of bang for your buck. A lot of bets you can make, player props as well, week in and week out at betonline.net. They can also get you betting on other sports as well, including the MLB playoffs. The Philadelphia Phillies are in the wild card this Friday against the St. Louis Cardinals. You've got MMA, boxing, golf, hockey. The NHL's coming up. The Sixers and the NBA. Bet on everything at betonline.net. Again, they're the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Head over to the website, betonline.net on your computer, or use your mobile device today to learn more about the trends in action, because BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles. We thank you so much for making LOE your first listen each and every day. Eagles Cardinals this Sunday. The Eagles are 4-0. The Cardinals are 2-2. They're definitely a good test. They got a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. I think they have the right linebackers to match up with Jalen Hurts. They've got a lot of weapons that we'll see Nick Sirianni still kind of iffy on the status of Darius Slay, if he's going to play in this game. Avonte, Maddox, both questionable. The Cardinals, even without DeAndre Hopkins, they've got Rondale Moore back now. They've got Hollywood Brown. They've got A.J. Green. They've got Zach Ertz. They've got Trey McBride, James Conner in the backfield. Kyler Murray is really good at making things happen by himself with his legs outside of structure. This is not a team definitely to overlook. It's a former playoff team that, again, they're a roller coaster, I think, with bad coaching, but they've certainly got talent. And at home, that's not a team to take lightly for sure. I'm very excited for this quarterback battle, though. You look back at 2020, that shootout in the desert between Jalen and Kyler was so entertaining. And really, that was a cool moment because that was the first time you thought, okay, maybe Jalen Hurts could actually be something at this level. And I thought what was most impressive, I remember doing that recap podcast with Gino. After that game, the Eagles came up just short, but they were getting dominated early and often. And then Jalen Hurts took them back. And considering the Eagles were still alive in the NFC East race, by the way, so that was a game you had to win or at least stay alive in to, you know, have a chance at the playoffs still, even though it was a long shot. You're down by a lot on the road, you know, a high pressure situation with a depleted, defeated roster, and Jalen Hurts brought them back. That was when I first thought, man, like, we'll see. I'm still very skeptical, and I was very skeptical at the time of his passing ability. But I said, if he can ever take those steps, he's got the mobility. He can make plays outside of structure. He can elevate a team that does not have a lot of talent. And man, is he calm and poised in situations where a lot of other players crumble. I remember that Arizona game was the first time that I saw that. And, you know, we knew he had that at Alabama and at Oklahoma in college, but to see it at the NFL level is a whole nother beast. And so that was maybe the first time we saw Jalen and really him flashing that ceiling that he showed. Even in the Saints game, a lot of that was controlled within the structure of Doug Peterson's offense, a lot of RPOs, run plays, not a lot of deep shots down the field or Hurts making things happen outside of structure. That Cardinals game was more, all right, you gotta win because you're quarterback. I'm going to put this team that's dead in the water on my back. And they came up just short, but that wasn't because of Jalen. So like I said, him and Kyler, they're two of the best mobile quarterbacks in the NFL. They are very hard to get to the ground. It's them, it's Lamar Jackson, it's Josh Allen, and it's a few others. It's going to be a super entertaining battle. I love seeing Hurts. Last week, he beat out Trevor Lawrence. He beat out the former first overall pick that we never thought Hurts could get to that ceiling. And that was probably his best quarterback test so far this year. And he outplayed Lawrence in tough conditions. We'll see if he can do it back-to-back weeks, beating another young quarterback that I think a lot of people talked about as, you know, somebody that this past offseason, there were trade rumors. There were debates on Eagles Twitter. I remember seeing it. It's like, if Kyler was available, would you take him over Jalen Hurts? So it's another guy you compare Jalen to that's in a similar tier. And if Jalen gets a contract extension, I think the deal would probably be very close to what Murray got this offseason. So it's going to be fascinating to see those two battle it out. Murray, to me, is still, I would say, a more talented overall player, but, you know, Jalen's taken a very similar step, and I trust him more to sustain this than Kyler, because although he doesn't have the arm talent or the speed of Murray, he kills Murray in work ethic and leadership. And those two departments are huge for a quarterback. You know, you look at Kyler Murray and just, it never feels like his teammates are vibing with him at all. And, you know, I don't like to really buy into rumors you hear about things going on in the locker room, like last year with Kyler Murray. And you saw the team leaking stuff about him being a sore loser and, you know, not taking any of the blame, deflecting it on everybody else. And I tend to not really like to listen to that kind of stuff until I, you know, because you never know what's going on inside of a locker room. But unlike, you know, for instance, Carson Wentz, when that happened with Carson, you had a lot of guys that were part of that core with the Eagles come to Wentz's defense. With Murray, I mean, where this offseason were all of the Cardinals players coming to bat for him on Twitter, during interviews? I didn't see it. So that's one thing Jalen definitely has over Murray is the work ethic department. You're not going to have to put a clause in Hurts' contract next offseason that he needs to watch a certain amount of hours of film all week. If anything, you need to limit it. You need to say, Jalen, look, you got to be out of here by at least 3 o'clock in the morning, right? We heard that story from Tim McManus of ESPN that even his rookie year, Hurts would not leave the building. It's cliche, but he truly was the first one in and the last one out. And I think that's what we can appreciate that we have as a quarterback in Hurts versus what Arizona has in Kyler. But regardless, Kyler has the talent. He's going to be a tough test this Sunday. How I'd like to defend him, I don't know. It's kind of pick your poison with a mobile quarterback, because if you stay back and you try to keep everything in front of you, that gives them open lanes. And if you try to blitz, you better hope you get there, because if he escapes, there's going to be less numbers down the field where he can use his elite arm strength, or he has the speed to get, once he gets by the blitz, as we saw with Jalen against Detroit and Washington, he can make those plays. He can make you pay with his legs. So I would tend to try to defend him similarly to how Tampa Bay and even Jacksonville defended Hurts last week and in the playoffs last year. If you're going to bring blitzes, or even if you're going to stay back, I would love to have Kazir White or TJ Edwards, maybe even Hassan Riddick at times. Just be a little more cautious, even spy Murray if you can. Keep him in front of you, because Kyler is an explosive athlete. And with the way how bad I think Cliff Kingsbury is as a play caller, initially with the 15-play initial script, and even after that, Kyler has to do a lot of things off script, outside of structure, not just because of Cliff, because that offensive line is not great. So the key is going to be in this game, honestly, just keeping Kyler Murray in check as much as you can. And I'm sure Locked On Cardinals is saying the same thing about Jalen Hurts, because Hurts can kill you in the same ways that Kyler does. Both of these teams, what they do have is exactly what you need in a franchise quarterback. That's mobility and the ability to carry a team outside of structure. You're going to have to do that, because at times, not everything's going to be as perfect and complete as the Eagles have right now across their roster. As the Eagles fans know, look at the 4 seasons after 2017 before this, after they won the Super Bowl. They had to have their quarterback carry them a lot. Things aren't always going to be perfect. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have bad drafts. You're going to have holes on the roster. But when you have a guy like Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts, you can still stay afloat. So I can't wait for this matchup. We're going to dive deeper into it tomorrow. Locked On crossover Thursday with Gino Camilleri of Locked On Eagles and Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals. They'll dive deeper into the matchup. We got a show for you Friday as well. 5 shows a week, Monday through Friday, right here on Locked On Eagles. Subscribe to the podcast on all platforms and on YouTube as well. We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen today and every day. Make sure your second listen is the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm Louis DiBiase signing off for Locked On Eagles. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds.